Hey now, welcome to the 5th episode of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been with us all along, well then welcome back. If this is your first time popping into this podcast, well then welcome. Today's quote I'd like to start out with comes from Mr. Graham Hancock and his book Supernatural: Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind. Shamanism is not confined to specific socio-economic settings or stages of development. It is fundamentally the ability that all of us share, some with and some without the help of hallucinogens, to enter altered states of consciousness and to travel out of body in non-physical realms, there to encounter supernatural entities and gain useful knowledge and healing powers from them. So that quote just kind of furthers my feelings of helping find the others and helping everyone wake up and move beyond our physical limitations that society sets forth for us. And I'm starting to feel that we've found quite a lot of others, and I'm hoping that we find some more. So we don't have a guest today, but as always, Stan is on the line. How you doing there, man?
Good, man. Doing good.
Yeah. So we're doing this one early in the morning, so I'm wondering, if we're going to be a little more focused. I feel like some of the late night ones I might get all over the place, but I'm feeling pretty energized and ready today. So like I said, that we don't. First I've gotten a couple emails about this, and I need to give a shout out. The music at the start, we did not create that. That is actually from a band called Broke for Free, and it is a song called Night Owl. And I think I've forgotten to give them props. It's just a cool song I like. I found in royalty free music. So thank you to them. If anyone knows them or whatever and likes them, they've mentioned, that they like that band, and I need to give them props, and they're right that I haven't done so yet. But like I said, that we don't have a guest for today. Stan and I just wanted to get a chat in with just me and him. But we do have our first voicemail from calling the Google line, where you can leave a voicemail. You can leave your name or stay anonymous if you want to ask a question, or just direct the conversation. Please feel free to do that. And so we had the first person call and leave a mail, and I haven't listened to it. Have you listened to it yet, Stan?
Nope. I figured might as well just have it be a fresh take right off the bat.
Okay. So yeah, and we'll figure out from this if we need to screen them from now on.
I guess that's part of the fun though, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first things first, I just want to say the number is 567-233-1335. Feel free to give us a call. Ruben covered all that, but let's dive in.
My name is Jake. Through one of the others podcasts. And, real motivational stuff you guys are talking about. I just had a simple question. I've been dabbling with LSD for a while now. Is there any way to intensify a trip without, taking more acid? I heard things about 5-HTP. I'm probably butchering that, but yeah, that's really my question. Thanks for the content. I really appreciate it. I watch everything you upload. Huge fan. And yeah, bye.
All right. So thank you for being the first call in. And I respect your wishes to stay anonymous. And it was a pretty simple question about how to intensify an LSD trip without taking more. So with LSD, I don't know if 5-HTP will do anything. 5-HTP is good to take just as a supplement anyway, to increase serotonin production. It's a precursor that your body breaks down and then uses parts of it to make serotonin. This can be beneficial for like sleeping and dreaming and stuff like that. It's very beneficial to take after you've done MDMA or MDA, because they increase your output of, they make you, it squeezes out all of your serotonin. And then, so it's good to take 5-HTP for a week or so after a MDMA experience to kind of build back up your serotonin reserves. And this can like kind of help with the post-roll depression that someone can experience. With LSD and psilocybin and DMT, these substances mimic serotonin, and they kind of take over your serotonin receptors. So I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the chemistry to know that if increasing your serotonin beforehand by taking 5-HTP will do anything. So that's something that, I need to research more about that. What I will say about increasing the intensity of any psychedelic experience, not just LSD, but of mushrooms or well, maybe not DMT. It seems pretty extreme anyway on its own. But I'm a big proponent for everyone that is using psychedelic experiences or psychedelic drugs to have nitrous oxide on hand. That it allows you, and I'm not talking just like the whipped cream containers and you press it a little bit, to get the gas that comes out before the whipped cream does. I mean, getting the actual, like, to make your own whipped cream, but not putting anything in it, and buying the chargers and the, filling up balloons is what you're supposed to, for safety, fill up balloons, because then it doesn't freeze your lungs. I hit it right off of the whip it container. And I've never had a problem, feeling like I froze my lungs or my mouth or anything like that, but it is pretty cold. But it gives you the ability to just crank the experience up to 11 for like 3 minutes. And I mean, there's a reason they call it hippie crack, because it's so good that you just want to keep doing it. And you will just go through, charger after charger, because it's so awesome. And it's, you have this extreme level of visuals and physical sensation and a out of body experience. And I mean, it runs the whole gambit of all of these things that people talk about, except it's for 2 minutes and you're not afraid at all. It just kicks you off that cliff. And it really helps once you come back to like your normal level of tripping that you're at. All the anxiety and stuff like that is gone too. So it's like when I'm starting to like kind of have a rough come up, I hit that nitrous and it just boosts the rocket, past all of the negative stuff that's coming in, and then drops you back off, and all that stuff's gone. And so it's not if the caller was asking about intensifying the experience long term, I don't know what you can really do with LSD other than the nitrous. With mushrooms, we talked about in the last podcast, Syrian rue. And so that is something I recommend for anyone who is trying to have a psychedelic mushroom experience and to lengthen that experience, that you need to look into Syrian rue or passion flower or the cappy vine that they make ayahuasca with. All these things contain an MAO inhibitor that will lengthen the experience. And I don't think that works with LSD, but I may be wrong. I haven't looked into that, I guess. LSD lasts long enough as it is.
Yeah.
I've never researched that.
What about simple things like vitamin C? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I really think that helps the experience as well. I remember, back in high school with LSD, like there was one trip where me and a bunch of dudes were like, it might have even been 4th of July. I don't know. There was fireworks involved. And we had read about vitamin C makes the visuals more. And so like we bought that before the trip and we all took chewable vitamin C and we were all like laying in this field and someone was shooting off fireworks. And we were listening to Radiohead and the fireworks were so awesome. And all of us were like going, vitamin C, bro, vitamin C. And we were all yelling about vitamin C. And it was funny because I remember too, we were at like a big high school bonfire party and there was like maybe 10 of us that were tripping on acid and then like 50 people that weren't and were just trying to, get drunk and get laid. And then there were these dudes that showed up in a pickup truck, blasting Radiohead and yelling about vitamin C. And and this one dude who was like a senior, we were like sophomores or something. And this guy that I knew that was a senior came over. He's like, hey, can you guys shut the fuck up about vitamin C? We're trying to have a party over here. But, we definitely at that point realized the difference in the visuals. But I've noticed taking it now to where I'm not trying to have, visuals. I'm trying to have internal visuals. I have noticed it does a lot to, alleviate the like kind of with mushrooms, at least to alleviate the body load, the tension on your muscles. And, I can get kind of achy and stuff like that with mushrooms. I don't get that with LSD, but I also haven't done a large dose in a while. But I have noticed that I take, prior to, taking mushrooms, I take vitamin C and magnesium. And it seems to really curb the body load.
What does the magnesium do for you? I've never heard of somebody taking that with a psychedelic.
Well, magnesium is good to take anyway as a supplement for muscle cramps and stuff like that. But it also, it's a lot of people that are into, like natural anxiety cures and stuff like that. Apparently magnesium, has a lot to do with that too. And it's probably just all tension, like I think a lot of anxiety can be physical tension that just manifests itself in your mind as being anxious, but you're really just tense, so magnesium and potassium like kind of work on your muscles and the electrolytes in your muscles. And magnesium is good for that.
Okay. So it probably helps with any potential vasoconstriction or. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's I don't take as much like kind of pre-trip stuff for mushrooms other than those two things. Like I said, I did, I don't know if I will really do it much anymore, but I did have a bunch of MDA, which is, similar to MDMA. But I did have a bunch of that I was using a couple years ago. And that has some, it's disputed, but the reason it was made illegal in the 80s was because of some lab results or some results of it being neurotoxic and being able to, actually harm your brain cells. And so I researched a lot of kind of almost antioxidants to take before you do any sort of rolling. And so I would take those, and it was a pretty big cocktail of the magnesium, what was the other stuff? Alpha lipoic acid, and I don't know, I can't remember, but there's a lot of research out there for like how to roll safely, and and so there's a whole bunch of stuff you want to take like antioxidant wise, but that's not really necessary for mushrooms. They aren't very toxic at all, and so like it's not really necessary to take all that stuff ahead of time. I only try to curb my like anxiety and tension from the come up, which seems to be more extreme than other people's. So I take the vitamin C and magnesium, but I recommend most people just try it without taking that stuff first and see if they think they need it.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't, in terms of people's, the coming up process, a lot of people just say, or Terrence McKenna, I guess, and a lot of his followers just say to smoke the bombers. But for me, that could lead me towards a negative headspace, or it could just spiral me out of control to the point that my mind is just thinking it's too fast, So, I've been trying to just find as much as I can to really calm down the process. I really want to try with a large dose, kratom. I think if I like mastermind some sort of blend, I think I could probably get a great starter, like to take right before or after, right after you take your dose of psychedelics. I think that could be really, really good, because when the negative mind space, or I guess the anxiety, can start to come up from the psychedelic, I think that's when the kratom would be kicking in and it'll ease you in perfectly. So I'm definitely excited. I'm going to try that sometime soon. But you mentioned that you tried Phenibut beforehand. Did that have, or Phenibut, however you pronounce it, did that have any good effects with the overall experience?
Yes. So, I don't recommend people take Phenibut without being really researching the dosage levels
or anything for that matter.
Well, or anything, but out of all the drugs that I experiment with as an adult, Phenibut scares me the most, honestly. That it seems like the tolerance buildup is pretty quick, and that the withdrawal symptoms can be pretty terrible. So that's why, like, I really caution people to not just take my advice for it with Phenibut and to research it. However, I did find that that's probably going to be my pre-trip thing now. I had I don't have a prescription to Xanax. I probably could get one, but I don't like the way it makes me feel. But I have access to it, and for a while, I was either taking Xanax before I would trip, or like waiting till I was like, oh my God, I got to take Xanax. And it was like my like safety valve or whatever, and I found that it would make me very lethargic, that I would just be crawling around basically. And I would still be tripping, and I wouldn't be scared or anxious anymore, but it just kind of really, really put a wet blanket on the whole experience, I found the Phenibut. Now, Phenibut takes quite a while to kick in, actually, and it's pretty long lasting. I found that with that, I was much I carry a lot of anxiety into the trip even before I even take the mushrooms. I'm usually kind of like, oh, okay, I hope this is going to be good. I don't go into a trip with a good, like, this is going to be great. So maybe that's why I have a lot of anxiety, but like, the Phenibut stopped that. Like, I was excited to take them. It was going to be a good time. I knew it, and it's that's what I like about Phenibut. I take it like before I play a gig, like with my band and stuff like that. And I find myself to where normally at a gig, like I'm very like, I'm off in the corner, like not talking to anyone and stuff like that. Like I get very, kind of this withdrawn artist kind of thing going on, and which is stupid because most of my gigs are, there's 10 people in a shitty bar. So I should probably talk to people, but yeah, like I've found with the Phenibut, I'm like Mr. Talkative, and it's really good for like social anxiety. And so I've taking it before the mushroom trip. I'm like ready to go. I'm like excited about it, not energetic. It's weird. It's like a different thing. Almost. It's a confidence. Now if you take caffeine with the Phenibut, then it's like this kind of, energetic confidence, and it's good. Or it's really good to take with modafinil. I wouldn't do modafinil with mushrooms though. So like I don't want to take caffeine with it either, other than like, it'll sometimes be in the tea I make or something like that. But I just took Phenibut, and I took it like 3 hours before my last trip. And it was great. It really, I didn't have any of those moments of anxiety. Like you said about cannabis, I usually wait until like after the peak to smoke. And then it's great. And I smoke all throughout the come down until I fall asleep, and it's great. Because I was smoking, like I would drink tea or eat mushrooms and then smoke. So I'd be like already high, and then it would start coming on. And I think that would like kind of amp up the anxiety. So I usually wait till the end. But with the Phenibut experience the last time, first off, the mushrooms took oddly long to kick in, to where they were really old. And I was like, these might not be good anymore. And then I was like, I'll just smoke a bowl. And then it like kicked in, so I don't know if the Phenibut like held it off. And then once the cannabis hit, then they all kind of combined. But it was a really good come up that was a lot better than the last, bunch of trips.
That's awesome, man. I got to try that out.
So I really think it was the Phenibut. And also, I mean, it wasn't like I was like in a really good, I wasn't in a bad headspace, but I've been having like a lot of stressful stuff going on and whatever. And usually I dragged that into a trip, and I didn't. So I really do think the Phenibut was very good. And I cautiously recommend it to people that have a problem with tripping.
Yeah, but like you said, definitely do the research. It's like one of those drugs that it's very, very, you mentioned, very, very addictive. And like one of the main cautions is drinking on it and not to drink on it. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody that might be researching it.
Yes. Alcohol. I've had a couple times where, and that's the line you have to walk, because I don't take it frequently. I mean, I take it twice a month, maybe, know?
Well, and the thing is that when the time that you're taking it, you're basically taking it to be a social lubricant. So it's like you probably are going to be out anyways, so drinks are going to be around, and it's just, that is the tightrope.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was going to say, is that when I do take it, it's when I'm going out to go to a bar. Yeah. Now I'm not a heavy drinker anyway. And I would definitely drink more at home. I don't like bar prices of alcohol. So and being unemployed, I can't really afford that much. But I'll find 2 beers and I'm like, whoa, I need to slow down, or stop, and to where normally like 2 beers isn't going to really even give me a buzz, but the Phenibut really, I mean, it almost doubles the effect that alcohol will have on you. So, drinking 2 beers is like having 4 right away. So that's definitely something to be cautious of with anyone taking it.
Yeah. So, well, to change course a little bit of our discussion, I wanted to bring up a couple of articles that I've been reading about the space that we discuss and see what your take on it is, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right. So first one we touched on last podcast was There's this couple, I'll try to give a synopsis as great as I can. The publication was written by Quartz, QZ.com. You could find it if you just Google Quartz magic mushroom monopoly, it'll come up. But anyways, the headline is that there's a couple that is trying to create a magic mushroom monopoly, and how they're trying to create it seems to be creating a patent for this high potency, or not high potency, but a very, very pure form of psilocybin that is a bit able to be used for testing in academic research and in clinical trials as well. And there's no other company out there that has been vocal yet that has created a exact psilocybin that is as pure as this company has. So they created a patent, or are trying to create a patent, I believe, for the methodology of creating it so nobody else can copy it. And that gives them, you know, the checkmates going forward with who gets to use it and for what reasons. And I think another red flag that came up in the article was that whenever they do offer it to a trial or a clinical study, they own the rights to the publications that are written and the journals that are written about the study. So they can completely edit those, they can completely withhold them, and it's just putting a shadow over what can be an amazing and bright thing for our future. And I just wanted to get what your take on it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we've talked about with cannabis and the evolution of policy in cannabis, that if there's money to be made, someone's going to see that ahead of time and try to be the first, through the door to patent it and to find, a pharmaceutical drug that they can make out of this substance. I think with mushrooms, we're kind of at the point in this country, at least, we're kind of at the point with mushrooms that we were with weed, like maybe in the 90s.
Yeah.
To where we're just starting to be able to talk about it. They're just starting to realize its medical and therapeutic potential. They're just starting to research all the chemical components of it and see what they could make, medicine out of. I don't know. I think it was in the 90s. It might have been earlier when they came out with Marinol, like the, synthesized THC. It might have been a little earlier, but still, like, that's when that was starting to come out, and they were like, "Oh, we don't need to legalize weed. We made you a pill," and it didn't work. And it goes back to what we've talked about before of the holistic view of the substance. All of the things that are in mushrooms, all of the things that are in cannabis, all the things that are in kratom that work together to provide the experience. You're never going to have the same experience by condensing that down to one substance.
Mm-hmm.
And so this company can, market that or corner that market by patenting, to try to just get psilocybin. But, the levels of psilocybin to psilocin in the mushroom, the levels of baeocystin, all of the other alkaloids and stuff like that, are they researching that? Are they adding that into the pill? I don't think they are.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to provide the same experience. I think you would have visual alteration and the body feel and a mental head change. And you would have psilocybin inebriation, but I don't think that you would have the mystical experience and the spiritual awakening that you can get from eating the whole mushroom.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know. I just, whenever I see, somebody taking drugs and turning it into like a commercial sport, it's just not always a great feeling. But that is true. I mean, you see it even with analogs and different research chemicals, that all it takes is one small change and it becomes an entirely new thing in the eyes of the law, So I think it'll be okay. It's worrisome that, of course, it hits major publications, but I think it'll be all right.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's also a potential that I touched on a couple podcasts ago, I think. And my view of the future of which is definitely shaped by Philip K. Dick's book, The Three Stigmata of Eldridge Palmer, that I do think that human ingenuity with psychedelic drugs and the psychedelic experience will get to a point where we can tailor the experience to have a very specific trip and go to a very specific place as a kind of escape from normal reality, but not being at the whim of the spirits. And I think there will be an interest in the future in doing that. I don't think that's good, though, and I don't think most people that are into the psychedelic experience and altered states of consciousness and stuff like that, I don't think we want to tailor the experience. I think we want to learn and have a lesson and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the people seeking to profit off of different social movements here and there, they don't realize that. They don't realize that there's we want to be at the whim of the spirit world, and there's no way to profit off of that other than having a retreat in where you charge thousands of dollars for rich people to come and have this experience. But as far as making a drug or making a product and patenting it, I don't think you can do that, because that takes you out of the spiritual realm. It's much like the quote at the start that, shamanism isn't confined to specific socioeconomic settings. It's above all of that, like the spirit world and the world of the shaman is above the economics of life, I really feel that. And it's one reason I believe in cryptocurrency so much, because people seem to think that the economy is some sort of law of physics, and it's not. It's a human construction, and that's why cryptocurrency, which is totally a human construction, I don't understand why people will not give that any, they're like, it's not backed by anything, it's not real or whatever, and it's like, well, the money in your pocket isn't real either, all of the economy is all a human construction as well. And I think that psychedelics take you out of that that frame of reference. I'm someone who rediscovered psychedelics as an adult for spiritual growth, right? Another benefit that I've gotten from it is total just relaxing of my financial stress. Of worrying about debt or saving for the future and retirement investments and all of these things. It's really changed my perspective of that. Not to the point where I'm like, who cares or whatever, but to the point where it doesn't add stress to my life anymore, And I think that's another thing that, it doesn't bother me that people are trying to profit off of it, that's something that's going to happen. That's just a sign of them being unenlightened.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, for me, what you were saying, how that these things might be tailored to, take the mystery or, the spirit part of it out. Whenever you are extracting something and just extracting a drug just for what is wanted out there instead of what's needed, I think that is a major issue. Because I think if you do take the spirit component out of these experiences, or say this 100% or whatever percent psilocybin substance that's being used for these trials doesn't create those life-changing positive experiences, I think with how early this is in our society, it can cause some problems going forward, just because this is the only substance that's being used in these trials. And that's where my worry comes in, because I don't want, I mentioned in the last podcast with Gary, it's just, I feel like this is almost like a 2 strikes you're out kind of, or 3 strikes you're out kind of situation. And this could be a second strike, so I don't want to get any closer to the out scenario of this.
Yeah. Well, even without the patent that this group is trying to make, the trials that are showing such positive results and moving the whole therapeutic usage and making it designated a breakthrough therapy. Like they aren't giving them mushrooms. I mean, they're giving them synthesized psilocybin.
Psilocybin, yeah,
so
true.
we're already having positive results from that. They're probably just patenting the process to make that. But that goes to, like, I'm so glad that Johns Hopkins and all the work being done with maps and all this that's providing this real world data that policymakers need in order to feel like they're accurately policing this substance. It's great that they're having this result in these clinical trials that are in a hospital and everything like that. But it goes to why I feel that podcasts like this are important, and YouTube channels and forum postings and whatever. Why they're important is that data doesn't just have to be clinical. Anecdotal data can be, it can be important. Like our personal experience and trying to get that out, like it's important, sharing our stories. That's research.
Yeah.
As long as everyone's being truthful, it's research, and being truthful and respectful. Like it's all research. And I don't think that you can just say, like, oh, well, because these two dudes went to a farm and ate 5 grams of mushrooms and had this experience, that doesn't count towards the overall view of it, because they weren't with a doctor in a hospital, and they weren't given purified psilocybin. Like it all of the data needs to count in this scenario when we're talking about substances that potentially can be a watershed moment for human spirituality and just the future of humanity. It can't just be limited to one synthesized substance in one specific setting. The whole mushroom, or the settings we need to see what it does to what people in any situation, or to any people in any situation, and just kind of like compile all the data that way, I love what's going on, but I think it has so much farther to go. And that's where, like, my idea of, taking these experiences still with a therapist, but taking them outdoors and taking them to, places of magnificent splendor and, in the world. Like, we need to start getting reports written about that, that it's nice to have this psychotherapy where everything's in these people's heads, but I want to see how, treatment resistant depression responds during a psychedelic assisted experience in nature.
And yeah, I mean, from what I've experienced personally, whenever I go the complete dark route, or complete darkness route, which is what they're doing on these trials with an eye mask and headphones. Whenever I go that route, it is a journey inward, but whenever I go outside, I still have I still have a journey inward. But when after I'm done appreciating nature, and I'm out there appreciating nature, and the trip and the psychedelics have worn off, I have such a more positive outlook than when I'm just sitting, laying on a couch in complete darkness with headphones on. It gives you, your mind starts comparing the beauty of nature to the beauty of your life. And, I guess you see the beauty of everything when you're out there experiencing it all. So I think that'd be a great variable to throw in the mix.
Well, and I think, it can almost be more transformative, to where an internal trip, if you have psychological problems that you're taking this, therapy in order to help with, I mean, you can end up being more confused, to where I think a lot of people's problems, a lot of people's depression, and a lot of people's anxiety in today's society is just, it's because no one ever unplugs. No one ever just, goes and sits on a log in the woods, and a lot of people would be bored doing that, to where maybe if they had a head full of mushrooms and they went and did it, they would be like, God, I can't believe I've never done this, and it just gives you a newfound appreciation for life and everything that there is in life. And it takes away this, society wants us to believe that humans are the most important thing there is. And we're the absolute highest level of consciousness, and this whole universe is made for us and stuff like that. And mushrooms have the ability to be like, no, they don't, you're not, and they can either do that aggressively with what people would call bad trip, or peacefully, which I think, having still being alone, but a day trip outside, I think like it's a much calmer lesson that people learn from especially mushrooms, of no, like we're all in this together, the grass and you are just as important.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it just got me thinking, like, obviously, being outside can be scary for people, especially if it's, their first psychedelic experience. But I wonder if VR could even come into play there. Like, I know it'll never be able to be identical to the real experience of going outside and feeling leaves and feeling the breeze and things like that. But I wonder if that could play a major role in this too.
Oh, well, I mean, VR and AI are going to have a massive role going forward. Like we are never going to go backwards, like we're like, so, unfortunately, yeah, that will be the case. I mean, it's kind of sad to think about. And I know I'll never be part of the generation that does that is like, oh, I'm going to take a hike and loads up a hiking program. I'm going to always prefer an analog hiking experience. And I will, I will and do teach my children the same appreciation of actually being outside. But
just for people that, if they're going in to treat something and the therapist wants to throw in the variable of nature, but the person doesn't, feel comfortable enough going outside yet with these drugs in their system, I think it could be a cool variable,
Well, I think in that case, if someone's afraid of going outside, I think they need to
just throw them out there.
Well, no, but do it first without the drugs.
True. Yeah.
Have a
get comfortable.
Have a guided naturalist type of experience first. But and that goes to what I've said as far as what I see, like my future, if I do end up trying to be a licensed therapist, and get my master's and all of that, having someone that's already has experience as a naturalist and can guide you through that, that just goes along with the trust that you have to have for any therapist in any situation, so that's why we need a new kind of therapist that isn't just used to standard psychotherapy, but also has biological, ecological knowledge and
true. Yeah. Yeah. So that was actually one of the topics that article touched on, was that the company name is Compass, and the therapist that they used for the trials, their training consisted of 2 days of weekend training. So it's just not enough. And I really do think that it'll definitely evolve into something that becomes, somebody that's conscious about everything that you need to be knowledgeable on, But anyway, so second article I wanted to bring up, more of a hard drug issue, but still an issue that is facing our country, which is like the heroin and opioid epidemic. So it just got turned down in early October. There was a bill that would have allowed San Francisco to open safe injection sites. I don't know if you've heard about those. Yeah, so basically what it is a facility where heroin users can go and facilitate the drug, but knowing that everything they're using is pure and disinfected, and you're not going to catch anything from anything but the drug. They even provide like testing strips and things like that, and to make sure what you have is pure. And it's all legal right there. It's not like somebody's waiting behind the door to arrest you. And the big state that has been making a push for it is California, in particular San Francisco. But it appears that in Vancouver, where I think the first one was founded, they've done a ton of medical research while they've been doing this, and produced some really positive results on not only the experience, but like the mentality of the users. And I think this is, it's odd. It's definitely odd to accept it, but I think it could be something useful going forward. How about you?
Oh, I mean, if anything that the war on drugs has showed, it's that just say no and arrest users, it doesn't work. It like they'll cherry pick the couple people that like going to jail turn their life around. Oh, that's great. You helped 5 people this year, but you ruined the life of thousands of people, by just keeping them away, or locking them away. They become criminals. That you can get heroin in prison, so it doesn't make them clean and stuff like that. So it's the funneling the money that we spend on court systems into treatment, and then like people aren't just telling them no, you shouldn't do heroin. Well, that sucks. They're not going to listen to society telling them not to do it. So let's make sure they're just at least safe, because if you're telling them not to do it because you're worried about their safety, well, then what put your money where your mouth is, and so I would rather see the money we spend on courts and all the things that we that are standard for treating people that get arrested with heroin. Why don't we nip that in the bud and give them, a safe place and make sure they're not going to overdose and die in the alley, or whatever. But the fact that the research shows it was a good idea in Vancouver, it also shows the problem we have in this country of letting stigma dictate policy and not results. That for how long did we let the negative stigma of cannabis dictate the policy? And we still are. It's still a Schedule I drug. It's only a Schedule I drug because of its stigma. The results are in. It shouldn't be a Schedule I drug, but it still is because of the stigma. And now, I'm not a heroin user, and I don't, I don't think people should be, but I think there's too much of a stigma on it, and that it's, people blame, everything other than the substance. They blame the people, and whatever. And it's like, no, it's just who's making this fentanyl that's killing people, like people are just addicts. They need to be treated. Who's making the shit that's killing people? Because they know it's happening. Why wouldn't they limit that? It's just, I don't know. The fentanyl situation's weird. I mean, I had a friend that, he was a heroin addict for, 15 years. And we lost contact in that time. And I had heard that he was a heroin addict in that time. He started doing that after we had lost touch and moved on. And I had heard, through the grapevine that he was a heroin addict. I saw him out at a bar one time and he looked like shit and, and whatever. And, I had heard that. And then we reconnected later down the road, once Facebook became a thing. And, he was a fantastic guitar player, and I was looking to, I had a band breakup and was in between bands, and he wanted to start a band, and I was like, okay. And it was great for about 2 years, we reconnected. but he was obviously very hooked on heroin because, I mean, it was like he would go between heroin and meth, and those were his things. And sometimes he would come over to band practice and he'd be like real amped up and like he couldn't even fucking get a word in, or he would come over and he'd be nodding off. And it was just pretty sad to see that, and I remember talking to him like, because there was something about like, trying to use cannabis to get people off of heroin. And I asked him about that. I was like, have you ever just tried like, fully committing yourself to being a like heavy pot smoker instead? And he was like, are you kidding me? He's like, once it's got that hook in you, you're just done, And so, I mean, he went through the whole thing of, getting arrested, stealing shit. I mean, that drug, like, is so fucking addicting that you just have to feel sorry for the people that get hooked on it. But because he wasn't able to get it safely and to do it safely, he did a shot one time that had rat poison in it.
Oh, God.
And he was told, someone's like, hey, this batch, someone put rat poison in. And he did it anyway because it's the only shit he could find. And so, like, it's such a powerful drug that this obviously a bad stigma of just say no and the threat of going to jail and everything like that. It doesn't stop people. It doesn't take those hooks out of them, and then eventually, in this area, in Ohio, it's the fentanyl is crazy. And he ended up overdosing and dying. And his parents, found his stash and they had it tested and it was 100% fentanyl.
That's wild.
Yeah. And, that isn't what he started doing, but it's just how the drug dealers, I don't know the behind the scenes of the financials of why they get fentanyl and put it in there, but it's just crazy. And so the cops aren't fucking doing anything to stop that from being out in the pool of drugs that people are buying. And so if there was, safe places to do it, not everyone's going to go there, but I think people like my friend would have,
Yeah. Yeah. Damn. That's wild, man. I was actually having a conversation with some friends of mine about fentanyl and just the mindset of being that addicted in heroin, that you hear about some new drug that has the potential to kill you, and it's almost an attractive quality.
Yeah.
It's gonna fuck you up so much that you're gonna be flirting with death, and that is an attractive quality.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I'm excited for the future. I'm probably never going to do Iboga, but I'm excited for that. That could possibly be the next wave of research.
Mm-hmm.
Is treating addiction. We've got mushrooms and MDMA to treat PTSD and depression, but addiction is such a big problem too that I don't think just talking about it and having standard psychotherapy really, works for everyone. And I think, and going to jail doesn't work. So I think there's another route we need to take. And I think that's where psychedelics can help. And it definitely seems like Iboga, because it takes you to, from what I've read and the reports is it takes you to the other side, and it shows you everything that, that the addiction does to you. And it shows your addiction as a living entity, and you embrace it and can actually overcome it through the use of Iboga, because Iboga basically kills you. And it can kill you, like the dosage is to take it right up to the point where you're about to die. Because of that, that's why I don't see myself ever using that drug. But the reports on it, like curing addiction and stuff like that, alcoholism and heroin addiction and smoking and all these things. Like, it fucking works. And it's, I'd like to have someone on from Canada that knows anything about it, but, I believe it's legal to do in Canada. You have to be licensed to be able to be,
to like administer it
at that point. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Canada's always been looser on that, with use of peyote and, I believe mushrooms and stuff like that. It's kind of a under the radar, like, it's okay to, they're much more, I think it all falls under like, religious freedom and
Gotcha.
And they just, they don't have as much red tape to go through. Like, there is, churches that are like the LDSV, I think, church in the States that can do ayahuasca ceremonies, and they're allowed to and stuff like that. But there's a lot of like, to be an established religion or a recognized religion in this in America, there's a lot of red tape you have to jump through to be able to have legal psychedelic ceremonies outside of therapy. I don't think it's as restrictive in Canada, and I think that Iboga falls under that. But I don't know. And so, if there's anyone out there listening that's from Canada and knows more about their psychedelic laws, I would love to have that discussion and have them on.
Definitely. One of the things you touched on when you were telling the story about your buddy is the anecdotal. Going back to the beginning of the episode, is the anecdotal evidence and the anecdotal research that needs to be done on these on all drugs, in my opinion. And I feel like a scientific mind can kind of brush off any anecdotal evidence and anecdotal research being done just for hard numbers. And with these substances, that can't be the case. You almost have to value the anecdotal more than the numbers, because, if you take a certain psychedelic and the blood pressure goes up, well, that doesn't really mean much. What means much is what's going on in between your 2 ears, So I think really that will be a major evolution in modern science, will be taking people's accounts more, or valuing people's accounts more than the hard numbers.
Yeah. Well, and it goes, like you said, the scientific mind, right? And so I always struggle with that, because I definitely see things in numbers and data and research and whatever. And if it's not observable, that it might not exist. But psychedelics take that away. The psychedelic state exists beyond numbers. It exists beyond language. And that's why the whole idea with entities, right, is that, some people's perception of meeting their own parts of their ego can be perceived as, I'm meeting extraterrestrial entities. Some people's perceptions of just, kind of random closed eye visuals could be perceived as, I saw these entities. So it's like, that's what the scientific mind in me says, but like, I don't know. I've seen and experienced crazy shit on psychedelics, and once you achieve or approach ego loss or ego dissolution, like, everything is thrown out the window of what your mind thinks, because it's a realm that is hard to describe, and you could go 100 different times and have 100 different descriptions of it. How do you have any data for that? The data is the stories. It's the people. And as long as we can be open and frank in our discussions, then that's data. When you're making a YouTube video and you're just trying to be more sensational than the last guy that has a video, and you're just trying to get more views and clicks and have good graphics and do all these cool things, like, you're kind of, you're tainting the data at that point. I prefer, open discussions like this podcast, or videos that are just a person in front of a camera, and you can tell that they're being honest. You know, you could tell that they're telling their story and they're putting all their emotions out there. And that's data to me. Like there is no numbers. It's not quantifiable, but it's data, you know?
So what you're saying, like DMT, or not DMT, but just any sort of entity or spirit, seeing them, what do you think? I have not experienced that personally. I know you haven't either, I believe. How much do you think somebody's expectation and knowledge about the subject impacts their experience? For example, somebody that is super into Terence McKenna believes his word, believes everything he says, and all of a sudden goes into the realm and sees these machine elves that he preaches about. How much do you think that is part of the beforehand work being done in your mind without you even knowing, and then it output into your own experience? Because when you were talking about somebody's experience being when you're talking about taking anecdotal evidence, one of the things that I think a lot of people believe is that there is some sort of common collective consciousness that occurs when you take these things, that, can produce similar experiences within the community. But I really think, at times I've thought, that it's just because the people taking it are listening from these figureheads, and it's just part of the expectation going in.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to piss anyone off that does, has smoked DMT and seen entities and done all this. But I think, about 99% of what they see is influenced by their expectations going in. But that doesn't mean it's not a collective intelligence. You know what I'm saying? Like that their description of it, when they come back to this reality and to this physical realm, they don't know what they experienced, but they know what these prior descriptions are. And they're like, yep, that's what I saw. Okay. So it was these entities and they told me this and that, and like, so I don't discredit the experience and the importance of it and, the gravitas of it. I don't discredit the fact that all these substances could be a form of intergalactic information or, time travel even. Like, I don't think there's a way to physically time travel, but I think there's a way, because the psychedelic state exists outside of what the physical realm is policed by time, and the psychedelic state doesn't fall under those same restrictions. But the idea that that I saw the same thing this person saw, you have to take into account human psychology and the fact that you're looking for those patterns. Human psychology looks for patterns everywhere. And if you have an expectation of what you're going to experience, you're going to be looking for that pattern in what is a crazy soup of psychedelic colors and lights and feelings and all of that. You're going to seek out what is familiar, and what is familiar is what you heard Terence McKenna or whoever talk about, Yeah.
And that's why I was reading Michael Pollan's book about psychedelics. And, one of the paragraphs that stood out was when he was talking about the discovery of LSD. It was pretty much the first time anybody's taken a psychedelic with zero expectations and zero knowledge of what was going to occur. And to me, that's just so powerful. And because you just don't have any reference and you're just in the moment experiencing what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I would need to hear from someone who didn't know anything about DMT and never heard about it. And someone was like, here, smoke this, take 3 hits out of this pipe and hold it in as long as you can. And if they come back and say, I saw aliens and jesters and whatever, and if they come back and say that, and that is, an experience that is, you could reproduce with other people that you find that haven't done DMT, then the scientist mind in me would start to believe like, oh, okay. And I would re-look at my situation. But that's, I have if anyone's listening and knows of someone that's had that experience, and had no idea, like I would love to have that discussion. But everybody that I've talked to that's done DMT totally expected to see entities before they did.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a drug where you take, that's the first thing you take with no knowledge going in beforehand. It almost have to be like an accident.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went into the 5 gram experiences that I've done. I've went into them wanting to see machine elves or, all the stuff that Terence McKenna described. And very little of it was what was described. Like I had my own experience, and I had, I've had interactions with my visuals, which could lead someone to believe that's an entity. But I really think that people are disregarding human psychology when they think that is an outside, they're experiencing another intelligence. I really do think it's your own intelligence, but I also think that we do have a collective intelligence, that, we are all one. We're experiencing our individuality for a brief moment. We're the universe experiencing itself kind of thing, that the psychedelic state puts us back into where we came from. And so like, it's kind of a weird thing. Like it's hard to describe. But I just haven't experienced what I would totally say is another intelligence specifically telling me things, like I haven't gotten to that point. Maybe, I'm not sure, maybe if I did 31 grams of mushrooms, I would be like, okay, there's totally, praying mantis people out there and they sent maybe I would have.
Yeah.
That.
Well, and I think I really think that people that don't, or people that take it that aren't necessarily tuned into their own thoughts and their own patterns of mind can take that when you're thrown into that in a psychedelic trance as an external voice.
Yeah, I mean, for all the entity talk that Terence McKenna had, people forget another quote he has of that we are so out of touch with our inner psychology that when we encounter it under psychedelics, we think that it's an alien entity. I mean, so he had those thoughts too. Like he wasn't all about the machine elves. There's the human mind, and that's what all psychedelics should, the information that people should get from it is that the human mind is incredibly complex and hard to understand, and we're nowhere near figuring it out. I mean, we're probably as a species going to bypass it through technology way before we actually understand it.
Yeah.
I do feel that humans are we could be the last wave of purely biological humans before, I really think that we're going to be semi-android before too long of, having things implanted and stuff like that to, like, I don't know. Do you watch Black Mirror?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know how that guy loves it. Like every episode they have like the eyes that, they can, it's like basically like Google Glass, like implanted into your eyes. Like, yeah. I mean, for the sake of making our lives easier and making it easier to get directions places or buy things or watch things, like I really do think, I look at my kids and how they are with technology, like that generation, it won't be very hard to encourage them to, change their biomechanic properties, biomechanical properties in order to make their life easier.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of Elon Musk's projects is the Neuralink.
And, the Neuralink. Yeah.
And he said soon when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said that soon they'll have the ability to, I take everything he says with a grain of salt, obviously, but he said that soon they'll be able to link you up basically so that your brain has the internet at its access, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, that's like almost no fun. It's like, why would you want to be around a ton of people that just know everything? You already are around a ton of people that think they know everything. So it's like, when they actually know everything, then what else is there to learn, you know?
Well, I mean, we all have Google for brains right now. You know, like I read constantly, and how many times when we're talking about shit do I not know the details? You know, like I don't pay attention to that because it's like I can Google that if I really need to know the details. You know, but I mean, it's to us, you know, and you're even younger than I am, but like to us, it sounds crazy to like, why would you want to be linked up to it? If you tell my kids, like, you could be linked up to the internet and they would be like, oh, so I don't have to have my phone on me. Like they think that's cool. That would be cool to them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's up to me as a parent to break that, you know, be like, no, let's go hike outside and leave our phones in the car. That's, you know, and to like constantly try to get them to appreciate the natural world. Society does not do that. Society totally pushes every generation farther and farther into being technologically advanced. And, you know, I mean, we touched on it with AI and VR. Like, these are cool gadgets now to us, but in 20, 30 years, they're just going to be the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we run into a population crisis at some point, and everybody's living in tiny China-esque apartments just with a VR thing on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really is a very realistic thing. You know, I mean, just look in our lifetime 10 years ago. If you're like, hey, I got a smartphone, people be like, oh, cool. Yeah. You know, I don't think I need one now, but you know, I'm just gonna stick with the flip phone. Now, if you're like, I'm going to get a flip phone, people are like, what the fuck's wrong with you, hippie? You know, and like, that's just 10 years that like, and we're moving so fast now that like, I mean, the humans and technology, it's going to be insane. And I think that is going to further increase the thirst for psychedelics in society, because I think you're going to have more others that we're trying to help find, right, that are going to be like, whoa, I've had enough of this fucking Neuralink bullshit. I'm, you know,
you're
like,
unplugging. Yeah.
I'm unplugging. And then what's funny is I think that psychedelics and mushrooms especially are the original Neuralink, you know,
True.
And people be plugging back into that.
Yeah. Well, I think I've always been a fan of gadgets, technology, all that my whole life, still am. And, you know, I see their purpose. I see them as a tool. I don't think I'll ever want to integrate them with my physical makeup, but any more than, you know, having them as a cell phone or a laptop. But I do think over time, spending so much time with this technology does create a yearning for a natural world, or it creates just an urge towards nature, because you're just so used to this, and eventually it just becomes mundane, that unless you just accept it as this consistent constant in your life, then you're going to look for other things to enjoy. And, you know, nature is one of those ever-changing things that it's not the same thing every day, you know? So I do think that even though it is evolving rapidly, I hope that, you know, Mother Nature and the universe will always find a way to find the balance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I don't mean to be I mean, I watch a lot of sci-fi movies and stuff, so I obviously, you know, have a different view. But I'm not trying to paint a negative picture.
No.
And if anything, I'm just like, you know, I think we, especially the psychedelic group, you know, try to fight that process. And I think another important lesson of psychedelics is like, you can't fight progress. You can't fight evolution. And all of this, you know, that's part of the evolution of humanity, is to become one with the technology we create.
Mm-hmm.
And the transition period is the tough, hard part. You know, if you fast forward 500 years, there's no problem. It's the couple hundred years in between, where you have generations, you know, right now, you know, I'm of a generation that remembers before there was internet, and that blows my kids' minds to think of what, if I unplug the router, that ruins their day. That's they can't even
that's
imagine.
Time out.
Right. Yeah. So like when there's been a couple generations that don't know pre-internet life, like the world will be very different, but I'm not saying that'll be negative, and it's just negative to us because we know what it used to be. And I think that's partly, like with politics, like I don't understand how like there can be, any political movement that's anti-progress. I understand if there would be conflicting views of how we should handle going forward. But I think part of the problem we have and why politics are so unsettling to people is because the basis of, or at least in this country, our political structure is fighting progress and conservative values, and like not, neither of them are moving forward together and coming up with a good idea of how we move forward. They're just, the pendulum's going back and forth of who's in control, and you spend your whole time while you're in control tearing down everything the other guy did, and then it just goes back and forth. And I think if we moved forward together, that politics and policy would be much more appeasing to more people than just being stuck 50-50 like we are, I think that that's another thing that psychedelics help, like I think that that's definitely a view of politics that psychedelics have given me, like prior, to rediscovering them as an adult, I was, very much like Democratic Party, yay, and then now I'm much more like both of you guys are messed up, I'm like, I don't want to even partake in the debate of if the Democrats are right or the Republicans are right. Like I hate, everyone's like, oh, you got to vote for this guy because we can't have this guy in office. And it's like, why are we voting against people? Shouldn't we be voting for people? And there's so many people that when they talk about their candidate that they voted for, it's like they don't really know anything about him. They just didn't like the other guy, and so that's just created a situation where we don't like who we've got, and it's such a hindrance in progress that like I think we will blast through that with technology, though.
Well, and definitely with psychedelics too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I could foresee in the future, other than the insane like human nature to quest for power, I could see that technology replaces politicians in the future. Yeah. Have you ever watched? It's kind of a comedy version of Star Trek. It's called The Orville. It's got the guy that did Family Guy. What's his name?
Seth
MacFarlane. Yeah. So it's like him, and he's like the Captain Kirk, and it's like a kind of a comedy Star Trek kind of thing. But it's pretty good, but it's funny. But there's this one episode where they go to this this world that it's a pure 100% democracy, and there's no politicians, and everyone votes for everything that happens on their phone. And I'm like, that's obviously a social commentary towards how powerful phones are, but it's like, I don't know, like I could see that happening at some point.
No, definitely. I mean, obviously there's caution issues that pop up, like, getting hacked or, hacking a voting system. But I mean, that could be happening anyways. So it's more,
it is happening.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I don't know. It'll be cool to see if if we do progress towards that, because everything seems a little bit outdated and just so slowly changing. And it's just not keeping up with the times. I mean, you said that there's just, it's just, you elect, say, a Republican, and in the first 2 years of his 2, 3, 4 years of his term, as president is just undoing what the last guy did. And if there's anything that psychedelics has taught me is if you have a hiccup in the road, or you're going through, say, a relationship or something that is providing this negativity, you got to move forward, and hopefully we see that, man. I would love to see that within my lifetime. I don't see it like with the marketing that's behind Democrat versus Republican and the huge billing of the elections. I just don't know the breaking point of that.
Yeah. Well, and it'll be interesting to see in the future, just in my lifetime, I've seen politics go from, you could be president, but you can't say that you ever smoked weed. Like we saw Bill Clinton was like the first one to say, oh, I didn't inhale though. Don't worry, guys. I'm not a stoner. I was just it was peer pressure. To Obama being elected, who is, there's pictures of him smoking joints, so that's okay. Like you could be that and be a politician. I can't wait till someone gets elected as a president that's like, I used to grow mushrooms, like,
you got my vote immediately.
Right. But we'll get to that point. That's why I really feel, just from seeing the response I've gotten from this YouTube channel and seeing other, YouTube channels and stuff like that. I've really seen, and I agree with what I said earlier, about that we're at the point with mushrooms that we were like in the 90s with weed, and with how fast everything moves. I think we will be at the point we're at with weed now sooner than 30 years or whatever it took to get to this point with weed. We'll be there with mushrooms sooner.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Rick Doblin said 2021 he's looking at.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and I don't even mean like policy and legality. I just mean culturally and stigma wise.
Oh, gotcha.
I'd say the same amount of people that were growing weed in their basement in the 90s are growing mushrooms now. And in 10, 15 years, I think you're going to see people growing mushrooms. Everyone's going to have heard about someone that grows mushrooms, like to where now it's just kind of like kind of an underground thing, and people are just starting to be like, how do you do that, or whatever. But I really do think that they're just going to kind of be all over the same way weed is now, sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's hope, man.
Yeah, and I mean I know we touched on that in the last podcast about growing and stuff, and I think a lot of my description was pretty weak sauce, so I definitely recommend people looking up. Well, yeah, or call in with specific questions or to the number, or I will say shroomery.org, the forum there is a great spot to find. It's a lot of information overload, and unfortunately, I'll put this disclaimer out there: if you ask questions on there, I don't know why, but they are some of the biggest dicks on the internet. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't. You get that a lot on forums where someone will be like, you could just use the search bar, or whatever. But they go beyond that on Shroomery. I don't get it, because it's this this collective of mushroom growers. You would think that they were pretty cool and understand that, there is no such thing as wasting time and whatever. And you would just answer questions and you'd be all for people growing. But no, I don't know what it is. And you'll get 5 or 6 dudes that are just railing on you. And then one guy was like, come on guys, chill out. And then they rail on him. And then it totally derails the whole thread that you asked the question, where should I get my rye seeds? And then it'll turn into a 5-page flame war. And I'm like, what? Why is that happening on this forum? But that's my disclaimer for Shroomery, is that I think a better place to ask questions and to post pictures and stuff like that, if you're having problems or think you have contaminants, Reddit is a much calmer environment.
And the democracy of the comment section will weed out those shit talkers.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more people seem to just be able to let Reddit posts just go by and not comment.
Mm-hmm.
to where like forums, like people just like, it's like they're, I don't know, maybe Reddit, it depends on what subreddit you're in. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I get caught up in a lot of spats on Reddit as well. Usually over like mushroom dosage. But that is such a contentious topic, which is bizarre. But yeah, I said in the last podcast, I've gone to, like, whenever I'm getting in a argument about mushroom dosage, I stop myself from arguing, state my one claim, and then say, if you'd like to talk about this more, hit me up at Help Find the Others at Proton Mail and come on the podcast. Because I mean, I think it would be a better discussion than, like, trying to go at each other through, as keyboard warriors. I think having a discussion about it would be, much better.
No, definitely. And that'd be a great episode.
Yeah. Cause people get caught up and all the comments and stuff are all on people that say, I took a heroic dose of 5 grams. And then everyone's like, that's not heroic. And like, I will continue this mantra until everyone catches up. But the term heroic, it involves intent and expectation. It does not involve a dosage. If you are expecting that the dosage you're taking could be scary and it's more than you've ever taken, I don't care if that's a gram, that's heroic.
Yeah. I mean, just like you said about your buddy before we started the podcast, that, he's trying to take that heroic dose in total darkness and follow those rules. But, he's tried it, and every time it's coincidentally been a bunk dose or a bunk batch. And then the one time he takes 2 grams, he has, a mystical experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, okay, maybe the second time that you take 5 grams after having, maybe that's not heroic anymore. That's maybe a discussion we can have because of whatever. But if you're taking something that you're scared of and you're like, I'm going to work through whatever happens, I mean, that's heroic. Maybe heroic is too sensational of a term, and that's what people have a problem with. But it's funny because, like, it's just a term. I don't care. I labeled my YouTube video that to get clicks from the Terrence McKenna. Well, not to get clicks, but I mean, because it was a reference to Terrence McKenna because he's the one who inspired me to do that method and to rediscover mushrooms as an adult. And, that...
it's a trend. It's a trend keyword too.
I know, and it worked because that video has 110,000 views. And so if someone has a problem with the term heroic dose being attributed to 5 grams, first off, take it up with Terrence McKenna because that's all I'm referencing. Second, like, you make a video talking about it and shitting on 5 grams as a heroic dose. And if it gets more views than the videos that say 5 grams heroic dose, silent darkness, well, then maybe you're onto something, but I don't think you will, like, that's the thing. So, I don't know. That's my whole thing with, like, the flame wars with psychedelics is just, it's stupid. Why are we arguing this stuff? Like, we need to be, together on this whole thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you'd like to think that, just any ingestion of it is a win, Yeah,
right. And that, especially to go back to shroomery, is like, if you're a mushroom grower, wouldn't you really, really want to encourage everybody to grow mushrooms? And to discourage people that are just trying to get into it, who are having a problem, and they might end up going, I got contaminated, I'm not going to grow mushrooms anymore. And then they're reaching out for their last, like, bit of help, and you shit on them. Well, then you probably just scared away a potential mushroom grow, and, like, why would you do that? That doesn't help the community. So, there's definitely a lot of information for anyone looking to grow mushrooms on shroomery, but I would say don't post on there. I would just, peruse around and use the search bar like everyone says. If someone, it's going to be pretty hard for anyone wanting to get into growing mushrooms to do it right the first time. You can run into, when I was doing it, I always had contaminants and stuff like that. And you run into that. There's a lot of stuff everywhere, and you're creating an environment that other things want to grow in. So you're going to have things that you're like, is this contaminated? Is this not? And you might need to take a picture to run it by someone. And so I would recommend doing that on Reddit. There's a million different steps to follow. And so like everyone needs to really kind of research it if they're interested in it. I recommend people growing because it's very easy to do. And you're going to get your best potential like potency of the mushrooms. And I think you'll have also a better like spiritual connection to them.
Yeah. It becomes part of the experience.
Yeah. It becomes less of like buying drugs from a drug dealer and more of a like, oh, these are my babies kind of thing. And I think it's more respectful and everything like that. And especially, I get a lot of emails from, kind of people just like me, like I feel like I'm talking to me like 10 years ago of like, dads and stuff like that are like, I can't really trip, but this microdosing craze really has me interested or whatever, but I can't get acid anymore, or I've never done it or whatever. Growing mushrooms to microdose like is probably the cheapest psychotherapy medicine that you could get, because I think that microdosing mushrooms does more for anxiety or depression or anything than all of these pharmaceutical drugs. For probably like a $50 to $100 investment, you can grow in a couple months a year's worth of medicine.
Yeah.
I really, and it comes down to every plant medicine. If you can grow your own medicine, the world will be a better place if everyone's growing their own medicine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. We should definitely go into that in detail in another episode, though, the growing process. I got to head out.
Yeah. So
with that said, I'm just going to want to throw out the phone number one more time. It's the Google Voice hotline. It's 567-233-1335. We had our first caller today. We'll always address your question. Feel free to leave a name or a number if you'd like us to call you back for any reason. Or you can remain anonymous. We'd love topics, articles, any of that type of stuff. I did receive a text from somebody else just, sending his wishes our way, his best wishes our way. But you could also text us as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for calling in. Please, if anyone else has been thinking about doing it, do it. But thanks for listening, guys. And till next time, we'll see you.